Hey everyone, this is Jordan with Startup to Scale and Food Bevy, and I'm really excited for today's conversation. We're talking all about how to grow your brand from local to regional to national, and the challenges and opportunities that will come with that. So we have three great panelists today. We have Alison, who's the founder of Haven's Kitchen, a line of delicious sauces. I'll let her explain a little bit about those. We have Isabella, who's the managing director of Field and Farmer, line of refrigerated salad dressings and dips. And now they have a new energy bar. And so lots of cool things there. And Alex Bayer, who is the founder of Genius Juice. And so welcome everyone and all of our panelists. What I'd love to do is just have each of our panelists do a quick 30-second intro in who they are, what their products are, and maybe a sense of where your company is in terms of how many stores you're in or the scale that you're at now. So why don't we start with Alison?
Okie dokie. Hi, everyone. Familiar names and faces. Jordan, thanks for inviting me to this. I'm Alison Cayne. My product is Haven's Kitchen. Right now, our first product line is a sauce in a pouch. It is refrigerated. They are, non-GMO, gluten-free, keto certified, vegan, globally inspired sauces to put on, in, marinade, dress, etc. We started as a cooking school in New York that I ran for 8 years. Unfortunately, had to close in the middle of COVID. I met Jordan in a Chobani incubator class of 2018, when we were in 14 New York City Whole Foods. We graduated the next year to the region. Then in 2020, literally the week of the pandemic, we went national with Whole Foods. As a result of that, we were able to open up unified DCs all over the country. We're in about 650 Targets, Sprouts, a couple of Albertsons regions. So I think our store count is like 2,000 at this point. But super happy to be here. And I think this is a really important conversation, especially today.
Awesome to have you. And I think, we'll talk about some of those challenges, like as you grow, the scale kind of just keeps happening and how do you keep up with that growth, or even having a sense of your head wrapped around like what the business is growing. Isabella, quick intro on Field and Farmer.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabella. And I think unlike Alison or Alex, I'm actually not an original founder or co-founder. I joined Field and Farmer about a year ago. I grew up in big companies, so I would be what many would say, big company, big co. So sort of the evil bad side, bring in all all the training and hopefully use some useful tips and tricks to Field and Farmer. So Field and Farmer, just a little bit of background on who we are today and really a little bit about our origin. So as Jordan mentioned, Field and Farmer, we offer lines of refrigerated dressing, dips, bars, and cold pressed juices. And really that's a lot of categories, a lot of products. And ultimately at the end of the day, very crowded categories for the bars and juice specifically. But what we're really trying to provide consumers at the end of the day is really crave-worthy flavors that they grew up with, but that are clean, plant-based, and really flavorful. So I think about myself, if I were it's like indulging my inner child. Well, if I really wanted like a carrot cake, or if I really wanted to eat ranch, how about having a clean label, like plant-based version of that makes you feel good about that. So that's really what we're trying to do at Field and Farmer. And really how we started doing this, the original founders, who's no longer with the business, we actually started out as an urban farm west of Chicago, growing basil as well as other herbs, selling it to our local Chicagoland Whole Foods, as well as Jewel, which is a banner of Albertsons, as well as Mariano's, a banner of Kroger. So through that, I think we're a little bit early, to be honest, in the urban farming space. So eventually had to close that down. But while we were actually operating the urban farm, we actually utilized the scraps from the urban farm, so like the basil scraps, and created that into our sweet basil dressing. So that's really how we pivoted from an urban farm to CPG back in 2017. And in terms of store count and in terms of how we sort of expanded from local to Chicago to regional to now national, it's actually, I think, a very familiar story that you probably hear from other brands. We really just grew up in Chicagoland, through our relationship with the urban farm. And through that, we were able to then expand not just in Chicago stores of those stores that I talked about, but then regionally as well. Whole Foods Midwest regionally to start with, Jewel, within the Midwest region, as well as Mariano's. And then from there, we actually then took on a regional approach to look at natural stores and natural channels. And then from there, actually, similar to Alison, right before the pandemic, we were fortunate enough through our relationship and performance at Whole Foods to go national around April of 2021. So today we're in about 1,000 stores, national primarily with Whole Foods.
Amazing. And Alex.
Hey, what's going on, Jordan? And hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on your program here. Super honored to be here. So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder. A lot of people don't know that there was another co-founder to Genius Juice very early on that departed in 2016. And so Genius Juice basically is an organic plant-based coconut smoothie. We blend the entire inside of the coconut. So we extract the coconut meat and the coconut water. We source the coconuts from Thailand. They're young coconuts. What's really cool is that we work directly or through our supply chain partner with the farmers, and all of our suppliers are fair trade and fair for life certified, which I think is great. So we're paying the farmers like a higher wage than other farmers are being paid by other suppliers and other vendors. So we started in 2014. Jordan knows this. It's been a really, really, really long journey with this company. The first 5 years were incredibly hard just to find supply chain, to find sourcing, since we're literally using a specific coconut in the world, and we're literally like scraping out the meat by hand. Our mission as a company is to bring nutrition to the mainstream at a really affordable price, right? So instead of cracking open coconuts at home, you can have one of our products and enjoy the benefits of an entire coconut blended conveniently in a bottle that you can take on the go and really drink anywhere. So as far as distribution, we're in kind of the same as Alison. We're in about like 2,000 stores, 2,500 stores. Thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie just messaged me. And we're in Whole Foods nearly nationally. We're in 8 of the 11 regions. We're in Sprouts nationally. We are in Albertsons Vons Pavilions, which is a great partnership here in Southern California. And I think what's next for us is to continue growing and just expanding with our plant-based smoothies. And again, I think what makes us really different is that we are using the entire inside of the coconut, which is rich with MCTs and fiber and protein and potassium and electrolytes. So it kind of gives you everything that your body needs. And I thought it was a genius idea to include the entire coconut, which is why we call the brand Genius Juice. So that's us.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. And I just realized we have a very well-rounded group of panelists here. We have literally like New York, the West Coast, and Midwest represented in our panelists, so we can talk about that. And the other thing is that actually everyone's similar. Everyone has refrigerated products, and so has to deal with refrigerated distribution and supply chain, which is an added headache. And so there's some good things to go in through there. One of the things I just want to mention real quick is a quick shout out to our sponsor, Trax Dynamic Merchandising. And as you'll probably hear from this conversation, getting your product in a retailer and on shelf is tough enough, but a lot of the hard work comes in actually getting your product moving off the shelf. And so, Trax enables brands and retailers to better navigate that whole frontier, and through merchandising and demos, and both physical and digital, to really get your product moving off the shelf. So want to thank them, and they have some really great work. Trax is their new name. They were previously survey.com for those who are familiar with them. So one thing I wanted to touch on straight off the back is a lot of founders ask, do I focus growing within a single region first and saturate that market? Or do I work within a retailer like a Whole Foods to grow nationally? And what are the pros and cons of that? So Alison, why don't you start with that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Whole Foods is its own beast. Whole Foods is a bucket all unto itself. So growing with Whole Foods is not the same thing, in my opinion, as growing nationally in a way. Like, I think there's a mashup of those two questions a little bit. I would say that.
Tell me how Whole Foods is a little different.
So, first of all, the consumer is different. They are willing to spend differently. They know how to navigate those stores differently. There's a lot more refrigerated space, for brands like us. They want to be, they've had some identity issues over the last several years, but for the most part, they want to be a place of discovery for the premium consumer. So they are a great partner to expand nationally with. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that there is another national retailer that serves that purpose quite as well. And so, like I said at the beginning, when you go national with Whole Foods, you also end up opening all of the UNFI DCs. And that gives you this opportunity to start, really selling in areas that you wouldn't necessarily be able to. So that said, going back to the question, we were talking about, I have a podcast. It's called In the Sauce. I've been doing it since we started in 2018. I asked some very basic questions back then, like, what is operations? Literally, that was a question. Now I'm like, but I would say that everyone that I've spoken to that, just goes big really fast, whether it's launching globally with Whole Foods before you know who you are, or like starting with a Costco or a Target, which is, I don't think, a great idea. They miss out on a lot of opportunity to really understand the key questions. Who's buying this? Why are they buying this? Why are they buying this again? How do I talk to them? Those are all lessons and frankly, like, mistakes that we can make when we're still small and regional. Even, SKUs that aren't working, pricing that doesn't work, all of the stuff that, like, you kind of need to work out. And I would say, I mean, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that takes 3 to 5 years. That stuff is like, you're just like, it's all prologue almost, it's like all like just figuring stuff out. So I would say, focus regionally, but more importantly, focus on your core consumer and start to really understand who they are, why they're buying it, what they like about it, how to market to them, and then go, incrementally, because you really never get a second chance. Once you open the doors, they're open. And you gotta perform,
I love that. And that makes total sense. And I want to bring Alex in because I know, Alex, you guys have made some mistakes in figuring out your product and manufacturing and lost out on accounts and opportunities. And you're slowly, you're building those back up now. But talk about your process of kind of scaling up, then scaling back a little bit and scaling up again.
Yeah, I think it's important to be like really, I guess, the word is everyone uses it, transparent, authentic, or with where your product really belongs. And I've also been very open about our experiences, through LinkedIn, failures, right? Like trying to go into a certain store and like the glitter and the glitz of going into this big national chain or a mass market chain or whatever it is, just for namesake, oh, I'm in that account, right? You can tell your investors, I'm in that account. But then if you're not, like Alison said, performing and hitting velocities in those stores, you're going to end up spending all this money on advertising, promotions, TPRs, and then you end up losing money on every single unit. And then you're discontinued. And then you have to go back to your investors and board and say, oops, that wasn't the right move. So I think like the strategy is about really owning your backyard. I'm really, really big on that. So we're in Southern California, as you mentioned. There is a lot of business here. I mean, between Mother's Market, Lazy Acres, Whole Foods, even Sprouts here, you know, Albertsons, Vons, Pavilions. We have a lot more firepower here because we have a staff of people that are going out to the stores every single day. And there are many brands that have built successful multi-million-dollar companies not going everywhere. They're just focusing on like specific metro areas. And the velocities are so insanely great in those stores that it could carry your brand to do multi-millions. We do more in I won't mention what the chains are, but in a regional chain that has about 50 to 60 stores, we do more in those than 400 in another chain that's also in Southern California, because we do so well in this smaller chain, this regional chain that's here. So I think like quality over quantity, and like, sure, you know, is there a pathway to go to like, you know, MULO or mass market and conventional? Of course there is. You just got to be ready for it. You got to be funded. You got to have enough money to send people out to the stores to check the shelves, put coupon tags on there, to do promotions, heavy promotions when you first launch, to get people to try the product and drive trials. So I'm not trying to discourage people that are listening on this or watching not to go into mass market or conventional. You just have to be ready for it, and also support it and have enough financials or money to support it. And also you got to be at the right, I think two other things I'll mention really quickly: the right category at the right time and the right price point. So if your product is not really trending, if people are not really going towards it and it's not growing hot, you're probably not wanting to launch this nationally yet. You want to focus on maybe the natural retailers where the trend is much hotter versus conventional. Keto is a great example of that. Keto started in natural. Now keto is hitting mainstream. And then lastly, price point. You know, we entered into, I'm really public about this in the Target. I posted on LinkedIn, and we were at $5.99 in most stores in Target because our supply chain costs went up. Doesn't matter how great the product is or how amazing your branding is, $5.99 is going to bar you from a lot of conventional accounts where people just don't even want to try it because they're more price sensitive, you know, in conventional than they are in Whole Foods, where people are willing to be more adventurous and spend more money.
Can I add one thing to that? Because I think there's a good also little secondary point here, because I'm seconding everything you're saying. In addition to that, the big retailers are very eager to take new brands on. If you think about it, there's like 80% of the store, right? For them to stay relevant with consumers, 20% of their assortment across the store needs to be new and cool and fun and trendy. But that is constantly changing what is new and cool and fun and trendy. So if you as a brand don't move out of that 20%, because they gave you a shot, into the 80% that is like making them money, essentially, you're just going to lose your spot. So they're happy to take you in, you know, and it can feel really cool. And of course, like, you know, Alex said, like, to your investors, to the, you know, to just the sort of like rocket ship, let's go hashtag whatever community, right? Everyone loves like a woo, right? But the reality is that if you don't maintain it and then surpass, right, and build those velocities and get that repeat off that shelf, it's a 2-year window max. You know, Target happens to measure their slots a little bit more by dollars than by velocity. So sometimes if you have a premium price point and you're lucky enough to be in a good, you know, category there where like they're not expecting your velocity like us to be like out of control, we can manage it because we're making enough money for our spot. But I would hold off on that until you're really ready to spend.
Great perspective. Yeah, and we'll talk about that, retailers that support your growth within there, and others that just want to kind of put you up as a showpiece, but don't do anything to help you move velocity. Isabella, I want to ask you a little bit about slightly different question on the supply chain logistics of selling local or selling within a region, and how that looks, especially for, you know, frozen or refrigerated products and what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. So honestly, coming into Refrigerated was a big learning curve for myself. I'm used to selling candy and center store, so I'm used to a shelf life of 2+ years, as an example. So I would say my first 6 months, it was kind of a whirlwind, kind of learning the refrigerated space and kind of managing shelf lives of, between 45 to 5 months. So um, I think selling in refrigerated, as whether you're a founder or whether you come in as like a demand like sales or marketing person, you've got to know supply chain, because ultimately you are managing. You need to be even more accountable and even more on top of understanding sort of your turns, really being clear with your retailers on am I giving them a spoils allowance, and don't just go with an industry benchmark of 1 or 2%, because that can really cripple you. Because that's just what happens that maybe Kraft or someone else does for their center store products, which is not a whole lot, but for, again, a refrigerated product, that is a whole lot. So I think for me, from my perspective, anyways, there was a learning curve with like the perishable or refrigerated side of things. I think in terms of managing it locally, I would say, of course, like delivering it or even having customers pick up locally to us is a lot, we love it. We love it a lot better than obviously delivering it through to California or to the Northeast or Florida. It makes a lot, financially, it works really well for us. I think as we have expanded nationally, I think fortunately or not, it's been with UNFI. So I think for that reason, it's been pickup for us in terms of us not having to actually pay for delivery and really hire 3PLs to deliver that product for us. So I think on that end, it's been okay, with inflation, with freight increases. But as I think about expanding nationally beyond sort of the UNFIs and the Caynes of the world, that's like another sort of conundrum that we have to tackle, which is how do we think about delivering to the coast? Do we actually find DCs? Do we rent out DCs? We haven't actually figured that out yet because we haven't had to. But I would say that that's sort of like the next chapter that I'd love to kind of face into once we get more distribution. I will say though, like from an e-commerce standpoint, because we are refrigerated, and I'm sure it's similar for the rest of the panelists here. E-commerce is extremely expensive for us to ship to nationally. We actually were shipping to the contiguous 48 states during COVID, just to get some sort of volume and continue sort of some awareness building activities for the brand. However, actually, literally this week, a couple days ago, due to increased freight and something I've been wanting to do for a while, I've cut off shipping for basically anything that requires air freight. Basically, if I can't ship you ground today, I'm not shipping to you because it just doesn't make sense. So I think those are the sort of the questions and the things that I have to think about for a perishable product.
Hey, Jordan, I wanted to add a couple things because Isabella touched on some amazing points there that are like, I think, super relevant to like brands that are honestly struggling because of the national rollouts that, become national. You got to start shipping to the coast. You got to start shipping to Texas, Florida, all these kind of areas of the country that are really, really far away, especially for us, having a DC in Southern California. I think distribution strategy should also be centered around having enough product to have full pallets going out. Like that is something that we got basically destroyed by with some of our partnerships, where like we'd ship like a third of a pallet to like Ohio and it would cost $900 for an LTL 1 pallet. And you do the math per bottle, it's like $2 a bottle, and we're like losing money on every single bottle. So I think like, being a founder, right, connecting with other founders on here, just take your ego out of it. Like if you're getting a new account, like, okay, great. But it's not about getting the new account. It's about the longevity of the account being profitable, having great margins or stronger margins, I should say, and making sure that you're shipping full pallets, so that it's economical for you to be with this customer. And then one thing that you also touched on was about e-commerce. we're a Shark Tank brand. We were on Shark Tank in 2020. So we probably took we had the biggest challenges as far as how to get this to households across the country and making it economical. And at the end of the day, we know our product is premium. We know that it's quality, and we're not afraid to put the price up to reflect that quality, and not trying to battle other brands on price. We're battling on quality. And if you don't want to buy our product for $6, go buy a $2 naked juice. Go at it and have 50 grams of sugar, have fun. So we stand by our quality. So like, we priced our bottles to cover the shipping online at $7.50 per bottle. We were actually at $8.40 when we aired on Shark Tank. And we're like, if you want it, just buy it. We're paying for the shipping. We're putting ice packs in. So that's really my position on it, at least for now, is you may lose a lot of people, but you're going to be profitable, have great margins, and keep the people that really find value in your product. And then one very tiny last thing, more of a question for you, Isabella, is have you tried doing, instead of 2-day air for areas of the country that are really far, you could do 3-day ground. Can't go 2-day, but can go 3-day, but you put extra ice packs in there. That's what we do, because we avoid 2-day air like the plague, since it's so expensive. So just a tip like that worked for us is just adding more ice packs and creating a 3-day pack out for ground. That worked for us really well.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of follow-up questions for you, Alex. I'd love to do like a separate debrief, but
yeah, absolutely. Happy to help.
Yeah.
Can I add also just one little thing on top
Yep.
of, because I think it all goes back sort of to fundamentals, right? We're talking about expansion, but let's just back up to the fundamentals of the business, which is to say that if you don't have fundamentally strong gross margins, full stop, whether you are national or regional, whether you're selling to grocery stores or you're selling online, you've got to do some sort of marketing for any channel you're in. You've got to pay some distribution, whether it's UNFI or UPS, right? If you aren't building a brand, and I mean, in Refrigerated, we really should be at like a 40% gross margin before trade spend. That is really like the goal, right? Which means that product margins before trade spend, the making of the product, the freight of your product, packaging, tolling, should really be at 60%. If you are a brand right now who's like, we're at 22, but we think with scale, we'll get to 25, seriously rethink the product and the way you're making the product before you even start thinking about distributing nationally or building the brand much bigger. Because honestly, like, it's not going to work any way you split it, like, unless those fundamentals are really strong. And I don't mean to be discouraging. It's just something that is like, spare yourself now, get the product in order, figure that stuff out, and then you'll have like the time and the space and the money to breathe to figure out what works for you.
Definitely,
yeah, and investors, and and one thing, Alison, is like, investors are also demanding better margins as well. Like, we're not in the Suja age anymore, where like you can have 20% margins or low margins, but really big scale. And they just keep burning through capital because of the low margins. We're now in a sustainability age, with our company.
Unless you're a plant-based meat company that has no sales, terrible margins, and some ridiculous fake addressable,
ingredient list is this long.
Right? But
Plenty
like,
of those
really
out
cool
there.
brand, yeah, whatever.
So Alice, I'm happy that you mentioned the foundation, because I think you're totally right that most brands don't have that foundation, and the business doesn't get, or your financials usually don't get better as you grow if you don't have the foundation there to begin with. It's only if you have a solid foundation do things, like COGS slowly start to come down, but you're going to end up paying more in promo spend as you grow anyway that offset it. So that's why I love, Jean's question that she brought up, which is, what do each of you do to find and achieve that velocity when you're launching new chains? Or to put it another way, like, what's your new chain launch strategy, and how do you go about managing that? I know Alex had a couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge topic that could probably even have its own, its own call about this, its own program. So I'll try to make it as quick as
Actually,
I
I'll give a
can.
quick shout out. We will. So
Good.
May 13th, I believe it is, we're going to do a webinar all about this topic. So we don't have to, maybe I'll invite you back on for that one. But yeah, do the quick snippet now.
That's a good segue. Good plug. Good plug. Yeah, so I think like in general, like the question that Gene is asking about how do you achieve velocity, sustainability, demos, coupons. A lot of people like demos. I think they're maybe great when I think Allison's like already nodding on this one. Like, when you first launch, yeah, have a demo, just to kind of break it out, but it's so damn expensive to have demos. And the lift is only really going to be there when you're there. And maybe like for those few customers that will come back and buy it. I think the better way to do it is just to really take care of the stores, I mean, it's expensive, but having a merchandising team like a Base Makers, which we're with Whole Foods nationally, almost nationally, or Dirty Hands, and there's so many of them out there, but I think Dirty Hands and Base Makers are two of the best that I've seen that can go out there, face the shelf, get you more facings, put coupons on the bottles. Like those things do make a difference because you can't have a rep in the store all day, right? You have to have great placement and presence on the shelf. And I think that's really important. And it kind of leads me back to the other thing that we talked about like 10 minutes ago, where when you launch in too many stores with not enough money, you're never going to be able to support that. And that's what happened to us at Target, that we were in, 350 stores. We could only support 150 of them. There was 200 stores plus we never even walked into, and we had no idea what the hell was going on in those stores. Was it even on the shelf? Did it have enough facings? Was it out of stock? So having less stores and focusing hardcore on those stores and achieving velocity at those are really, I think, is the best strategy. And then 30 to 40%, like if you're in a chain, right? Focus on maybe not every single store, but the top 20 to 30% of the stores that are achieving and cranking the most volume, and get those volumes even higher. Because at the end of the day, the buyer, when they're reviewing you and deciding, do we expand to more stores? Do we bring in more SKUs? They're not looking at every single store, the buyer, because they don't have time. They're looking at what is the average velocity across 400 stores. So I think focusing in on your best stores and maybe also kind of fixing the weakest stores is a strategy that's worked best, for us.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I know, Alex, you and Wade do a podcast now or LinkedIn something, but I had Wade on my podcast a couple months ago. And one thing I can say for sure, in 2019, brands could not count on grocery stores to do the merchandising and to make sure that the voids were filled and to do any sort of off shelf for like us in a bucket with salmon, right? That was hard then. It is impossible now. So that in-store support is more important than ever. We do because our sauces are like what we call like incremental, and we are basket builders, and they're not like, you tend to buy a sauce with a piece of chicken or a piece of salmon or some tofu. We actually coupon the tofu or the salmon or the zoodles with a QR code to a recipe with our sauce and $1 off of our sauce. So we're couponing ourselves. But for those of you who like have a product that goes really well with another product, sometimes stores will let you go in and like do the cut veggies or do the stir fry kit and, a thing for our gingery miso. So we're kind of building our own off shelf without asking the store to do anything. We can't ask them. They have gotten the crap kicked out of them in the last couple of years. There's like no labor. They're all exhausted. They're essential workers. Like, I think one of the things that all three of our brands really have going for us, which is really nice to be on this call, is like, I think some of the digitally native brands kind of think like, I have so much mojo and all these stores are going to want me. And so they'll just be lucky to have me grace their shelves. I think all three of us are very much of the camp of like, we got to earn our spot every single day. And we have to build these relationships with these retailers. And we have to prove that we're valuable to the consumer. And there is zero arrogance about all of this. And it costs money and it takes time and it takes building. And, the more that we can do, we don't demo, to your point. We're a sauce. It's kind of weird. Like, what are you dunking a carrot in it? I don't know. I don't know who's the person repping us at the table. I don't know what they're saying. It's kind of, we have a lot of consumer education to do around our product to begin with. We like a program called Social Nature. It is expensive, but I will say that for us, it's been entirely worth it. There is a form that they have a network of, like, I don't know, 500,000 consumers. They take a survey to see if they're a good fit. If they are a good fit, then we end up sending a coupon for a free pouch. They then go pull, which creates some velocity. Then they have to write a post-consumer, like a post-purchase survey that goes onto our website as like a review, which is really cool. And we can have those on our website as well as like Target.com, et cetera. It's a dedicated consumer. We get their email. It's a great program for the right category. But to answer the fundamental question, all of those things that you mentioned are important tools. Some of them are going to work better for different categories and different products, and some of them are going to work better depending on what your buyer lets you do or is open to you doing. Some of them love in-store, signage. Some of them won't let you touch the store. But I think, to Alex's point, having people on the brand side in those stores, making sure that you are even in the slots that you've been given. Much of the velocity problem that a lot of us end up having is due just to voids. Like, the first thing you should check is to make sure I've been given 3 spots. Am I in all 3 spots consistently? That's the first thing. And then you want to, put dollars towards the marketing.
I love those. And then Isabella, are you guys working with a merchandiser, or are you doing it yourselves?
Yeah, so I was going to actually build upon a couple points, because I completely agree with what Alex and Alison have said. So quick response to the merchandising. So we do work with Green Spoon. They are a national broker for a couple key regions, but also Whole Foods nationally. So they do, as part of the brokerage service, they do go in store, take pictures. I saw a question here. They take pictures, upload it to the system. So we do see the before and after, set, and then they do try to fill the voids and, get us incremental placements or facings if they can. So we do have that. We haven't had time to deep dive into sort of the sort of effectiveness, but I will say that there's at least some baseline activity that we feel okay about. I think there probably could be more, which is something that we'll dig into. I think in terms of kind of support and velocity, I will say this, I think unsurprisingly, our velocities for Field and Farmer is probably 2x higher in the Midwest than it is anywhere else. And that is obviously not a coincidence. I think we have a lot more probably built-in awareness, despite being a different, an urban farm before to a different brand, which is a whole nother story. But despite having various identities, throughout the years, I think we do have more of a established customer base in the Midwest, which helps us. And that takes a couple of years to build and define who your consumers are, to Alison's point. So I do think, as we think about driving velocity sort of nationally or in the right chain, whether it's Whole Foods or somewhere else, I think it is really important to think about how am I driving awareness in addition to the trial? And because I am a food product at the end of the day, to me, I think because we're all premium products, I do think our products taste pretty damn good versus like the conventional. So like, I think the proof isn't actually someone tasting a product, but my struggle is demos are expensive. I don't want a third party doing it for me. How do I get these in the hands of consumers? So we have tried things like Social Nature and digital samples. I don't think we've cracked the code in terms of understanding what's the best ROI in terms of driving trial. But I do think it can't just be the trial piece. Like, how do I think the awareness is important. And I think shopper marketing with those specific accounts, whether it's Whole Foods, Sprouts, or whomever, whatever account you're at, whatever awareness driving mechanism that really gets you as targeted as humanly possible to their shopper are things that we're looking at.
So Tyler had a question as well asking, are there specific alternative channels that you recommend looking into that might be less competitive like other food service channels? Are any of you selling in those?
I think it really depends on your product and category. I have a bunch of friends who have great, you know, jams and honeys and mustards and, seasoning kits. And those are great gift items. They go great at, Anthropology, Urban Outfitters. Ibrahim just launched a dozen cousins at REI because that's a great place to have like an all-in-one, just like heat beans and rice. Yellowbird has a great business at REI. So it really depends on, like, we would I don't know what the hell would happen to us anywhere, but I think food service, again, food services can be a volume builder. I don't know that it's a great brand builder. I think a lot of us as premium brands are really focused on the brand that we're building, not kind of building out a commodity. If it turns out to be a great volume driver and doesn't kind of take time and energy and resources away from brand building, then it can be a really nice way to sort of, bring in some additional volume. But it's just, it really depends on the product and the category and the shelf life and, what makes sense. It's a hard question to generalize, I think.
Well, I'll say as well, from the snacking category with T-squares at the end of our life, we pivoted towards corporate offices.
Yeah, that was amazing. I remember that.
Yeah, it was like an amazing unlock for us because we were literally shipping pallets to like Oracle's office and Cisco's office like every week. And it was kind of wild what we were able to accomplish there, right? Until like the pandemic happened and every office shut down. But there are tons of opportunities like that, or where you can get like your branded product. But I'll tell you, those take a long time to develop and there's no easy way in. And so you almost have to dedicate a very specific part of your business and your time and really building up those channels. It took us 4 years to really like break into the corporate office market. So it's not always quick.
Yeah, and I want to echo Alison's sort of challenge here. It's hard for a refrigerated sauce or dressing to think about food service. Like, would I love our dressing to be on every restaurant top? Sure, but it needs to be refrigerated. So that's not going to happen. I would love to be Cholula, but we're not going to be. So I think the way that I think about it, we're not in food service, not strategically today. Like, we happen to be in some just based on our distributors, where our juices are in some cafes, but that's not, I would say, intentional. But as I think about food service, the way I think about it is if it can actually be a volume driver for me to actually fund marketing, I'm all for it. Because I need as much money as I can to recruit more consumers. So that's actually how I'm thinking about it now, is how do I actually create like bulk offerings for the, whether it's restaurants or other food service distributors, to kind of fund my growth, because I do need that money.
What systems and tools are you using to manage your business as you grow, right? Like at some point you are going to grow out of Excel sheets and Google Sheets. Like what software or what partners are you using to really get a grasp on your business as you're expanding?
I mean, we use Rodeo. They've integrated us into Deer systems. I love Zach. I love Rodeo. I think in general, outside sort of service provider, agency, fractional, whatever you want to call it, is really tends to be hard. They don't, they're over committed. They have a lot of clients, you don't get the time and attention, but most of us are not at the place where we can have all of our finance, all of our sales, all of our ops, all of our marketing, PR, everything in-house, right? So we have to figure out who's the best to outsource that stuff to. And I think Rodeo is just, hands down the best outsourced provider I've ever come across. Love them.
Alex, how about you? Anything that you're using that you love?
Yeah, a couple things. I'm like just taking notes actually. So yeah, I mean, like Alison said, there's like partners that you can go with where it's hard to have everything in house. It's just too expensive. And most companies, it's pretty interesting. Companies even doing millions in revenue, food and beverage brands, have like 7 people on their team or something like that, and it's really scalable, which makes it a fun business where you can have 7 people and be at 5 million in sales. And then when you go to 10 million sales, you just have to hire 2 new people or something. So the more that you can offload things that you're not really good at, like what we're good at, like I think like the founders, CEOs, visionaries, we're great at sales and marketing and raising capital and maybe some operations. But the more that you can outsource that to people that are just excellent at it, like that is the way to go. So like for outsourced CFO services and financial services, we go to Stage 1 Financial, which is like Propeller, right? They're a competitor to Propeller. For sales, we have the Driven. They're an outsourced master sales organization, and they keep CRMs of all of our accounts. They have spins data that we can pull from, right? That we pay for, but it's a lot better than just buying spins on our own, right? And I think also from a merchandising standpoint, Repsily is the best one that I've ever used. And then all of our partners, in Florida or Whole Foods or Base Makers, they use Repsily. So I think the bigger headline and picture is like what you're really great at, keep it in-house. What you're not so great at, or what would require too much of your time, energy, resources, and capital, outsource it. Because like my main thing and my biggest concern and focus for myself and our entire team is like, I want my team to focus on growing the company and selling and like focusing on forward thinking, right? Like operations, how do we save money? How do we lower the cost? How do we increase the margin? And the more that you get too distracted by handling every area of the business, you miss what's right in front of you that's really most important, right? So there's urgent items that can be handled by others. Then there's important items which can be handled by your own team. So that's what's worked really well for us.
Try to be able to get out with a 30-day. Everyone's going to ask for, 90 to 3-year exit clauses. Like the sooner that you can get out, if it starts to go south, the better, because the minute that you give anyone notice, they're like, boop, on to the next. They're like, they're out.
Definitely understand that. Jennifer is asking, Alice, if any of the companies that you mentioned, if you wouldn't mind linking to them in the chat, they can check some of those out. Software that...
You can just, sorry to interrupt, you can just email me, just alex@geniusjuice.com, and I'm happy to make the intros for you, because it's hard for me to type and look everything up while we're on here.
All right, let's do it. The other company that I found recently that I thought was really cool is a company called Crisp. They aggregate all your data into one dashboard, so you can literally see your sales like by individual retailers and individual stores around the country. So they're really cool. If you haven't seen them, I just threw a link in the chat there. But I love this conversation, everyone. We've gotten some really great questions in the chat as well, but I want to open it up to any other questions from our audience. So if you're listening, have another question and want to ask that to our panel directly, feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, and you can get your questions answered. If you're not in a space where you can chat either or talk, you can also drop them into the chat, and we'll make sure to ask those as well. So I got a private. Go ahead, Jennifer. Nope, you're good.
Everyone was talking, so I thought I'd unmute. I just wanted to ask about what's a good shrink percentage in the refrigerated space.
Depends on the category, I guess. But yeah, refrigerated, I would say. With a product, I would say, and everyone has a different answer, but for functional beverages that are refrigerated that have at least like a 6-month shelf life or more, and the turns, usually like grab and go, the turns are usually a little bit quicker, right? It's more of an impulse buy. You just go in, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm dehydrated, I'm going to grab whatever, a Genius or someone else in our set, Rebel, Koya, Harmless, one of those, hopefully ours. So I would say the appropriate shrink is, like for us, is targeting under 3%, given that it's a shorter shelf life. One like huge thing that's really, really helped us is when you have your unified buyer, right, that's ordering product from you, or your KE buyer ordering product from you, you have to imagine they have like hundreds of brands on their desk that they're making orders for. So we always gut check POs when they come in, because at the end of the day, if they over order or their projections are not correct, or if they're looking at the previous 3 weeks of movement, which had a sale going on, so the volume was much higher and now it dropped back down, or going into a seasonality, a lower sales seasonality like the winter, it's really, it's like so crucial to gut check every PO that comes in from Unify and Cayne. And if you see something that's like a little too high and you're like, well, I could spoil that product, which could increase my spoilage amount, you email the buyer back and say, why did you order 100 cases extra of original, right? Do you really need that many? And it causes them to focus on you, go back into their database, see how much is on hand, what the projections are. And they're like, oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm going to lower that order amount. Usually for spoilage, we don't get hit in stores. Usually what happens if we ever have spoilage, it's because the buyer is ordering too much because they just have so much on their plate. Normally they're great, right? But 90% of the time they're great. 10%, they will make mistakes since they're handling so many different companies. So that's been really crucial for us.
Love that tip. Kelly, do you want to come up and ask your question?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay. So my question is mostly for Alison and Isabella. I run an organization called Femmes in Food. I'm really passionate about championing women in the CPG space, but it kind of in a unique way. I've worked with a ton of chefs, ton of female chefs, and I'm trying to kind of bring their expertise into the CPG world as well, through whether that's content creation or recipe creation. So just kind of wondering what you all kind of do now to get kind of people to, whether it's social influencers, to kind of share or create content for you guys, and kind of how you're managing that.
Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead,
you
Alison.
go first. No, you go first.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Kelly, I think for mine's a quick one because this is something that is on my list, but we haven't gotten to yet. So I think recipe is #1 best way to showcase demonstration of our product. Especially as I think about driving more frequency of sauces and dressings, which is not an impulse item, although I would love it to be, and it's not something that you really think about. You usually have a dressing sitting in your refrigerator for maybe months past the recommended shelf life. So I think recipes is a great way for us to drive frequency and usage. And right now, I think today what we've used is actually a lot of influencers to create those recipes for us. And then I do want to then eventually post them on our website. In the past, way before my time, we had worked with a local chef that would help us develop recipes as well. I don't think we fully capitalized on that when she did create it in terms of leveraging that content digitally, which is, I think, really the true ROI of actually having that content. Yes. She really focused primarily on, I think, in-house for the internal teams, as well as customer meetings, as well as demonstrations, or product demonstrations. So I do think there's a huge need, and something that I'm really wanting to look into in the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I don't know if this totally answers the question in terms of the chefs, Kelly, but for us, content is king, queen, prince, princess, down to the ace. Like, content is everything. We just launched a YouTube channel. We have 150 recipe videos on our site. We have over 400 recipes. Just like, you can text yourself a shopping list from our website so that you can go and you can make that salmon with the gingery miso that we talk about. We have 200,000 followers on Pinterest, 35,000 on TikTok. We are making, behind me in the kitchen, we are making 6 to 8 recipes a week. I am a cooking teacher. This all came from a cooking school. The whole mission of the company is to get people cooking with confidence and joy. So for us, like, also with, things like golden tahini and romesco, people are like, what the hell is this? Why is it in a pouch? And why is it in the refrigerator? I've never seen sauce like this. So what? So it's very important to us in terms of the partnering with who we've partnered with. We tend to be very much like, you don't have to be a chef to make a great meal.
Yep.
So we tend to lean more on the average, home cook who's like just trying to get dinner on the table and like maybe takes a rotisserie chicken and like puts it with some cabbage and some sauce. So we've stayed away from more chefy types of recipes, although there is this little dream on the team to have like how chefs cook for themselves when they're not being fancy chefs. So DM me.
Okay.
I
Let's
love
see. Yeah, I'll ping you both on LinkedIn. I definitely have ideas.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then
that'd be
Alison,
great.
correct me if I'm wrong, but like I've always found the best recipes are ones that are popular recipes with like simple instructions and a twist using your product, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, our value prop is like all you need is like a piece of salmon, some rice, and you don't need the 18 ingredients that you would need to make the sauce that makes it feel like it's special. We do all the hard work. That's our
Love
thing.
that. We have time for one more question. Molly, do you want to come up and ask?
Yes. So since it seems that social is quite important to you all, what percentage of your marketing budget do you reserve for that? And starting out when your marketing budget is very tight, how do you be able to navigate that? Like, so for instance, right now, I don't have an outsourced team, but I'm struggling because I don't have the time to get to social because I'm trying to get sales.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say, for us, we didn't have much of a budget either. We still don't pay influencers. People love product, and people who love your product will post. They'll make content. They'll, reward them with like lots of shout outs and lots of love and make them feel, we have an ambassador program. We've never paid one of them. I have, a quarterly sort of meeting kind of thing with 150 people every quarter who just like love our sauce. We've never paid them. They want to talk, they want to share their recipes, they want to hear what's going on with the company, make them feel like they're a part of something, because they are, and they will be your biggest resources. And the one time we paid an influencer, we were like embarrassed and uncomfortable because it was like not a great post and it didn't do that well for us. So it can be done. I would say in your case, like you are totally strapped. I would pick a channel and I wouldn't make it Instagram. I would pick a channel that you just dedicate your time and your energy to. And just like we were talking about going from local to, regional to national, pick one, because there are too many channels, too little time. And, find what works for you. Where are your people? Who is using your product? Where do they live online? And go find them, and they will love you and they will support you and they will shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah, it's such a great topic. I was hoping would be brought up, and like I was thinking about at the very end of this program. I had dinner with someone who invited me out, and a new entrepreneur in the business. His name is Damian Law, I believe his last name, and he's with Effin' Good Snacks, and it's like a low sugar cookie, right? That competes with like Lesser Evil or Simple Mills and all these others. And he's like, invited me to dinner. He explained, like, I have 1,000 new orders and they're all digital and they're all from TikTok. Like they're all from TikTok, these pre-orders. And so what he did was, it took him time, right? Which is kind of the constant battle, is you have to make time for it. And I agree with Alison, one platform. And he basically documented his journey from like how he came up with it to like putting, doing newsletters to going to productions. Like he's documenting it like it's like a docudrama, and you get people like hooked on the story, and then they want to support you, and then they want to buy the product. So, we invest less than, $2,000 a month, which is really low in my opinion, on our digital strategy. We don't pay influencers. We don't pay for Instagram ads. We don't pay for Facebook ads because the CAC is terrible on it. It's all about getting loyal fans that are following your story, that buy into you, not the ads, but to you and your personality and your brand. And those are going to be people that are going to buy your product over and over and over online. And I mean, we're hitting 500,000 views on TikTok this month, when in January we had 40,000. So that has led to more sales on our online site and also on Amazon. So numbers don't lie. I think TikTok is the future. And if I were you, and if you're a brand, I would either have you as the founder focusing on it and doing stories and videos and opening yourself up to the world and what's going on behind closed doors, or hire someone to handle your TikTok. Midday Squares is a perfect example of that, where they are 50% of their sales are online, and they're not really paying a lot of ads.
It's like from them, like you know the founders, you know their story, and
their story is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would also say that even though you can't trace it to in-store sales, I can tell you, like, because Pinterest doesn't convert at all. Like, no one's buying from Pinterest. But I will say that when we do surveys and we figure out, like, how'd you hear about us? Why'd you buy us at Target? Most of the time they say Pinterest. So it's not to say that Pinterest should be your channel, but it is to say that even though you might not be able to convert or like attach an ROI, even if you're not selling directly, right? Like you are building awareness. You have to consider it an awareness builder, like it's that top of the funnel, right? And then you have to focus in on, okay, now when they're shopping. I would also say Instacart has been a huge mover for a lot of us. We were like, okay at Wegmans, we like quintupled our sales when we started doing Instacart ads, and nothing really happened at Wegmans. It's just that people started knowing what we were and seeing us more. And, it's hard to attribute. Maybe other things happen too, but all of these things really, you don't need to be everywhere, and you don't need to spend a ton of money.
I love that. And also just a quick shout out, Instacart's doing a program where if you're a female founded company, you're getting, they're giving out, I think it's like $20,000 in ad credits to use. Hit me up, email me. I have a good direct connect with their team too. So
yeah, I'm gonna definitely, haven't heard that from them. They have not reached out to me yet. So
I'll send it over to you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. I definitely appreciate you being on. Alison, Isabella, Alex, love your comments and your feedback. If you have any questions, hit me up. I can connect you with all three of them, and I'll send out the recording on Monday. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.